Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for this segment, we have Ethan Rose, and he is the assistant director at Predictit, the stock market for politics. Today, we're going to take a look at what traders are pricing in for what's going to be a wild ride in the Pennsylvania, North Carolina primaries. Ethan, it is great to see you as always. We always enjoy these segments. Let's talk about Pennsylvania first. And I think, and your notes alluded to this, it's the quality of candidate that is really giving primary voters, some question and reason to pause.
Yeah, so as always, great to be with you. The race that I think we should talk about first is the gubernatorial primary on the GOP side. And the reason why I want to talk about this, unless there's a big surprise, Doug Mastriano, he's a state senator in Pennsylvania, is almost certainly going to win, probably by double digits. Now, there is a last-minute attempt by certain GOP figures to rally around Lou Barletta in the hopes of stopping Mastriano. But Mastriano is likely to win. You see his 97 cents on Predictit, 97%. Here's what part of why that's important. Mastriano is about as far right as you could get in today's GOP. This is a guy who was at the January 6th rally. He has tweeted and supported QAnon slogans in the past, even though he's walked back on that since a little bit. He was a key part of former President Trump's attempts to overturn the election results in Pennsylvania. And a lot of Republicans, I have to tell you, are terrified that he's a toxic candidate who has no hope or very little hope of winning in November. So, this climate, Republicans overall are very happy with the political climate right now, but they are worried in Pennsylvania and elsewhere that the candidates they're putting forward are endangering their chances. So you could actually see there that as Mastriano has risen in the polls and as it's become more clear that he's the front runner and the likely nominee, you could actually see the Republican chances to win the gubernatorial race in Pennsylvania, which is about a 50-50 state, drop from about 65% down to about 40%. So the quality of candidate does matter. And we're seeing, by the way, the same thing on the Senate side of this race.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that, right? And, there's some of the drama that Dr. Oz has lended to this race. I mean, a TV show doctor, we've seen this before. This is not a new script in American politics, but, these do matter. Endorsements matter, apparently.
Well, and it's funny, it's not just Dr. Oz, because if you talk to or listen to GOP establishment figures in Pennsylvania, and on the national level, they invested a lot in getting David McCormick, the hedge fund CEO, to run. And polling shows he would be very competitive in the general election. He is considered a bit more moderate, although he's taken a harder right turn in the primary. But first, you had Dr. Oz jump in. He was later endorsed by President Trump, and he is now the front runner on Predictit. But also Kathy Barnett. And I got to tell you, this race has become about Kathy Barnett in a way it never has been about the other two candidates. That's certainly not to say she's going to win, but if you listen to media right now in Pennsylvania or nationally, it's all either for Kathy Barnett or against Kathy Barnett. Oz and McCormick, not the main characters of this race. And, you can see that as Oz and Barnett have risen in the polling, similar to what's going on the gubernatorial side, the odds for the Democrats have risen pretty dramatically on Predictit until it's now basically a 50-50 race there in the general election.
Interesting as you read between the tea leaves and what has the GOP concerned with the national candidates once it gets to that level. North Carolina, of course, experienced its own drama.
Yeah, so tomorrow is not just Pennsylvania, it's also North Carolina, Kentucky, Idaho, and Oregon. North Carolina, the 11th congressional district, is going to be one of the bigger races to watch tomorrow. That's Madison Cawthorn. Now, Madison Cawthorn, he's become a national figure. He's a first-term congressman, but in recent weeks, he's been involved in basically every scandal you can imagine. Everything from driving without a license to insider trading to things that I don't even want to say on air. It's gotten very ugly for him, and a lot of GOP establishment figures, including North Carolina Senator Tom Tillis and Kevin McCarthy, the GOP leader, are pretty vocally against Cawthorn, and with Tillis very openly backing Chuck Edwards, GOP state senator. So this is not something you see very often, where the big guns are coming in against an incumbent congressman, but on Predictit, people still think Cawthorn is favored.
Well, Ethan, what's disappointing about this whole thing is whether it's the GOP, whether it's the Democrats, us as constituents, I think we deserve better candidates, coming
Hmm.
into the polls. I feel like they're not legislating. I feel like issues are being picked and it's automatically the other side. There's no one coming across the aisle, and we elect these people to legislate and lead our country. And I have no idea what any of those candidates really what their issues are, but versus the dirt that they're digging up. And it's
Hmm.
disappointing. We need leadership. That's why we elect these people.
Well, if I could just say something to that, Madison Cawthorn, when he was first elected, he took what was considered to be a fairly controversial step of not even hiring a legislative staff, instead just hiring, spending his budget on communication staff. Because I guess he and others figure that to make it these days, you don't have to show that you passed legislation. You don't have to show that you brought things back to your district. You just have to, get a lot of retweets, get a lot of Facebook likes, and, go on TV. And I guess on Tuesday, we'll see if that works. I'll tell you though, for an incumbent congressman to be this endangered, it tells you that maybe that strategy doesn't work as well as he thought it would.
Well, let's certainly hope not. We can't legislate via social media, just like social media can't be the court of law. You can't develop your
Hmm.
opinions without going through the judicial process. Ethan, you know what? The pendulum always swings to not even the right or the left in terms of parties, but hopefully we'll learn something this year and going to 2024 that we have to demand legislation and better character from our candidates. Let's really hope we'll be having a different, tune about this in the next couple of years. Appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thank you for having me.